I'm Komsi Mahdi. I'm a Tunisian and I'm from BusinessMed. BusinessMed is the Union of Mediterranean Confederation of Enterprises. So we gather the private sector, the Confederation of Enterprises of the Mediterranean country. For example, our member in Malta is Malta Enterprise Association, is one of our members, and we gather the other members of the Mediterranean. We have 25 confederation in 80 countries from the Mediterranean. So work on several levels, as well as social dialogue with the unions, work on the enhancing the trade and the economy in the region, and also work on sustainability. And that's why we are present in such a project like NATI00NS, which I think after today's presentation, you will have more information about the Living Labs, about NATI00NS, the support that we'll bring. And anyway, so today we have gathered here at this national engagement event, the Maltese National Engagement Event, organized by NATI00NS to support the launched EU mission, a soil deal for Europe. It does so by, among other, putting in place an effective network of 100 living labs and lighthouses to create knowledge, test solution, and demonstrate their value in real life condition. So today's meeting, we will start by explain the mission. Then we will have an overview about the soil monitoring and resilience, the soil monitoring law. Then we will talk about the definition and the concept of the soil health living labs and lighthouses. And then we'll present the call for proposal launched by the European Commission under the Horizon Europe program. And at the end, we'll have an engagement session. So we'll have several speakers. They will go by after me in the event. Okay, so. Okay. So just be aware that we'll share the participant list with names, institution, and email address with participant for networking. We will take photo during the event for communication. So if you find yourself in a picture and you would like us to remove it, please send an email to the email there, info@nations nations.eu. So if you have given your consent during the registration, receive update from our side, from Nations, and all the information related to the soil and all the next event that we will organize. If you want to withdraw your consent, for sure, you could email to the same address email. This is an hybrid event, so it's recorded. So just for information. Okay. So from today's until your submission, so the objective for us is really that we have living labs created in Malta and they will submit with other stakeholders to the EU calls for proposal for the creation of living labs. So from today's event until your submission, many steps need to be taken. We have summarized the process in 4 phases. The goal is the end goal. A successful submission requires a solid effort in the preceding phases. These phases are focused on identification of your soil health challenges objective and linkages with the soil mission objective, forming a living labs and forming a consortium. So this is the 4 major, let's say, steps. So the support of these 4 steps will start today, right now, with an emphasis in the early phases. Today, we provide you the first background of the soil mission. We introduce the notion of living labs and how this can be a solution for promoting healthy soil. Okay, so let's get to it. What is all about? The EU has launched the mission, a soil deal for Europe, to provide for the gradual creation of 100 living labs and lighthouses in Europe, to lead the transition towards healthy soils. We'll get to living labs and lighthouses in a bit, but first let's remind of ourselves why healthy soil is something that need to be promoted. So life on Earth depends on healthy soil. So soil in the base of 95% of our food. Not to forget all timber we harvest and use. Healthy soil provide additional essential ecosystem services such as clean water and great habitats for biodiversity. They are major carbon reservoir, which help slow the onset of climate change while making us more resilient to extreme climatic events. Healthy soils are thus essential for all life-sustaining processes on Earth. In light of this, the mission has defined healthy soil as having the continued capacity to support ecosystem services. So, soil health is threatened globally because of range of human activities such as competition for land, intensive land use, production, consumption patterns, urbanization, and anthropogenic climate change. In Europe alone, about two-thirds of the soils are considered unhealthy. And this does not even include an uncertain percentage of soils unhealthy due to poorly quantified pollution issues. Such unsustainable human activity are often compounded by a lack of understanding or education. Degraded soil lose their capacity to act as carbon stores. They lose their capacity to filter and store contaminants, thereby releasing pollutants such as heavy metals or residues of pesticides that may end up in the groundwater or enter the food chain and pose a threat to food safety. The process of soil degradation can lead to collapse of landscapes and ecosystem, making societal more vulnerable to extreme weather events, food insecurity and contamination, and political instability. That's what we see in all the region, you can say in the Mediterranean and also EU. The cost associated with soil degradation in the EU exceeds 50 billion euro per year. As part of the EU soil strategy for 2030, a soil monitoring law has been proposed to ensure a level playing field among member states as well as a high level of environmental and health protection. The soil monitoring law is aimed at providing a legal framework that help protecting and restoring soils and ensuring that soils are used sustainably. The long-term objective of the proposed directive is to have all soils across the EU in healthy condition by 2050, as outlined in the soil strategy. So this was adopted by the EU Commission in July 5th, 2023. Amendment was proposed. The MV committee adopted its legislative report on 11 March 2024. On 10 April, the Parliament adopted its first reading, and we are waiting for the Council of the European Union also to adopt this amendments. In more detail, the objective on monitoring and assessment of soil health is to arrange for a solid and coherent monitoring framework for all soils across the EU. So member states can identify degraded soil to take targeted measure and regenerate this. The objective on contaminated sites implies that member states are requested to identify potentially contaminated sites, to investigate the risk, and to address an acceptable risk for human health and the environment. This contributes to reaching a toxic-free environment by 2050. Lastly, the soil monitoring law will make sustainable soil management the norm. Member states will have to define which practices they should be implemented by soil management and which should be banned because they cause soil degradation. The mission soil is thus important for the implementation of the soil monitoring law, notably through its funding for soil living labs as places to create and test solutions for soil health. Okay. Namely, the 100 living labs and lighthouses that EU Mission Soil Deal for Europe aims to establish by 2030 are real life-setting places for the on-the-ground experiments and can help identify and showcase which practices are locally successful. The soil deal for Europe is 1 out of 5 mission. This one is in recognition of the importance of soils and the pressure soil functions are under. Generally, EU missions are new ways to bring concrete solution to great challenges. The soil mission particularly is created to lead the transition towards healthy soil. It's also at the heart of the EU Green Deal, which is a package of policy initiatives to overcome threats by climate change and environmental degradation. The benefits of the European Green Deal provide, among other, fresh air, clean water, healthy soil and biodiversity, and healthy and affordable food. So there is the other 5 missions who are mainly on restore our ocean and water, the cancer and adaptation to climate change, and climate neutral and smart cities. So the mission really encourages strong stakeholders and citizens engagement to accelerate the co-creation and uptake of solutions. Living Labs boost open sciences and interactive participatory innovation, a collaboration across professional and places bottom up instead of top down. A successful missions require co-implementation by land manager, regions, business, researcher, policymakers, citizens, and international partners, among others. In other words, the soil mission is cross-scale, interdisciplinary, and transdisciplinary, where a strong social science component fills knowledge gaps and develops solutions for soil health and for the continuous provision of ecosystem services. So this is the bottom-up approach, complementation to accelerate. Okay. The mission is built up of 4 building blocks, which each address a hurdle to overcome. It's a bit technical, but it really puts the relevance and importance of Living Labs in perspective. So, one, the research and innovation program builds the knowledge base for soil health and its support to ecosystem services to overcome still existing knowledge gaps in and insufficient access to data and knowledge. 2, Living Labs and Lighthouses, who accelerate the creation and uptake of solutions to soil threats. 3, a robust soil monitoring framework at the EU level and at the level of the member states tracks the progress of the soil mission on specific objective which amount lack in capacities for monitoring of soil health. And 4, the final building block on soil literacy, communication, and citizens' engagement to address the insufficient awareness and know-how on soil health, which is mainly the very important to engage with citizens and people. These 4 building blocks are all together needed to foster a transition towards healthy soil. The soil mission goal is to create 100 living labs and lighthouses to contribute to lead the transition toward healthy soil. The soil mission includes 8 specific soil health objectives. The objectives are reduce desertification, conserve and increase soil organic carbon stocks, stop soil sealing and increase reuse of urban soils, reduce soil pollution and enhance restoration, prevent erosion, improve soil structure to enhance soil biodiversity, reduce the EU global footprint on soil, and improve soil literacy in society. Just to give you a heads up, while the mission includes this 8 objectives, living labs and lighthouses established within a consortium should not focus on all of them. There is no point of project with 4 disconnected living labs, each of them specific to a local situation. So here we need really to specify which objective we are targeting in our living labs. And we'll come back later in detail regarding the call for proposal and how to prepare, let's say, concrete and successful, let's say, proposition and how to select the objective. So, Finally, in this image from the mission implementation plan, you see how Living Labs benefit from and contribute to all operational objectives in the mission. Living Labs are really the core elements of the mission to accelerate the creation and uptake the solution for healthy soils across different settings as well in different geographical and socio-economic contexts. Living Labs and Lighthouses complement the research and innovation program with knowledge, innovation, and research question from practitioner in real life setting, responding to local needs. Living labs are also platform to test and adapt scientific knowledge, frameworks, and methods to real life setting. The Living Labs and Lighthouses use a soil health monitoring framework to assess the impact of innovations and of their practices on soil health and ecosystem. Moreover, they contribute to the testing and validation of monitoring technique and approaches. Finally, the Living Labs and Lighthouses are ideal places for citizens' engagement and for activities and practices to improve awareness and knowledge of soils. Thank you very much. So this is the framework of our, let's say, presentation today, the EU Mission Soil Deal. So now I will go to the next speaker, which is Mr. Matthew. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, for sure. But
Good morning, everyone. My name is Matthew Green McConnell. I work as a team manager at the Environment and Resources Authority. My work is varied. I work on habitats, species, but also on soil and desertification. So I will be overlapping a bit on Madi's presentation because obviously my presentation is about the soil monitoring law and MOT's perspective, basically. So as from July of last year, a lot of work has been undertaken. Discussions, negotiations, both at EU level, but also at the national level, right? We, Maltese, had also two bilateral meetings with the presidency, one with the Spanish presidency and another one with the Belgian presidency, in fact. But we have to say, ultimately, that the fate of this proposed directive depends on the new EU Commission, right? To be elected in next month, basically. Yes. So yes, this is a very brief summary of the objectives, as Madi also mentioned. There are two main objectives of this directive, all right? One of them is the establishment of a coherent monitoring framework. And the other one is to improve and maintain soil health and to achieve healthy soils by 2050, all right? And this is to ensure a good supply of ecosystems, all right? To mitigate issues like climate change and biodiversity loss, to ensure food security and also protection against natural disasters, and also to reduce contaminants to levels which are not harmful to man, but also to the environment, right? So if we have to see the whole framework, we can split it basically into three main sections, right? The first part is dedicated on monitoring and assessment of soil health. And it consists basically of prescription on how member states should do their sampling, right? Basically, the directive is suggesting we use the Bethel algorithm, which is a type of random stratified sampling methodology, right? It also establishes a set of descriptors and criteria which should be met, but also the methodologies to be used in order to assess these descriptors, right? The second pillar, as we can refer to it, is focused on sustainable soil management. All right. And the directive here prescribes a set of principles which should be respected in this respect, but also emphasizes on the need to promote awareness and also the need to promote research. Mm-hmm. The last part is focusing on the management of contaminated sites. And here we have a risk-based approach. So the member states need to focus on the identification of potentially contaminated sites or contaminated sites on the basis of the use of the land use, right? So obviously industrial zones will be more subject to scrutiny in this respect than, say, and it also sort of suggests a stepwise approach, basically the identification of potentially contaminated sites, the investigation of these potentially contaminated sites, and if these turn out to be contaminated, then there is a set of measures which need to be taken to remediate that soil. And finally, possibly the most socio-economically sensitive issue is the register of potentially contaminated and contaminated sites, which will be exposing sort of the areas which will have contamination problems. All right. Yeah. So the Maltese perspective. Yes. Basically, being an overpopulated, small and dry island by itself is already a major challenge. Right? We have a population of 1,677 people per kilometer squared, right? That by itself is already subjecting land to various land use pressures, right? And maybe one can mention also the new trend of actually acquiring agricultural land for leisure activities only, rather than actually using them for agriculture. So then the management issues, the management component will be actually not present at all. Drought, I mean, we have a very dry climate. And in this respect, climate change doesn't seem to be helping much. All right. And I think one of the major issues locally is data gaps, the exchange of data between different entities, and also facilities, research facilities where we can carry out our assessments. All right. So this is a major stumbling block in this regard, and I think it is the area which merits most attention, because without having data, we can basically do nothing. We cannot have a baseline towards which we try to improve, so we will be lost. Another challenge is the cross-sectoral nature of matters related to soil, right? Until last year, this was also a major stumbling block, and possibly Martin, before you took over, Tamara, remembers this very, I would say, polarized scenario of having the environment and agriculture not working together, unfortunately, but being hesitant actually to speak to each other because of the issues which might crop up, right? Luckily for us, we are quite resilient in the sense that a dry climate has been with us since thousands of years. So this is not something new. And yet here we are, right? Agricultural practices have been practiced on the island, I believe, since 5,000 years before Christ, so 7,000 years. So, and then again, the challenges which we have today were also present in those times, although maybe climate change, as I've said, shouldn't be sort of taken for granted. I mean, it should be considered seriously in this respect, but being a resilient, even society, or resilient, we have resilient ecosystems which have endured for a lot of years with these not so favorable conditions. I think this is a very promising outlook. All right. And my final comment is that in this year of negotiations and discussions, I am very happy that one of the major stumbling blocks, which was that of lack of communication between the Environmental Resources Authority as the lead competent authority in this respect and agriculture, we have managed to break this barrier. Thankfully, thanks to Sonia, yes, despite some confrontational meetings, now I think I can confidently say that we have established a very good working relationship. As ERA, we have also attended to agricultural consultative committees where stakeholders are present, and I can confidently say that interest from these stakeholders is basically increasing. In fact, I have another invite to attend to another agricultural consultative committee. This is very promising. So, I mean, without this cooperation, it would be impossible. And this was my biggest fear in this respect. Luckily for Sonia, this stumbling block has been softened. Let's call it that way. And I think this secures future good working relationships, which are key to addressing the very challenging situation that Malta has with respect to addressing soil matters. That's all from my end. Give the floor to Sonia as Director of Food Systems and also Ambassador of Sustainable Food and Organic and Sustainable Food.
Yeah, this presentation. So, good morning. Thank you a lot for this invitation to speak during this event. I don't have a presentation, but what I wanted to do was kind of share a few thoughts, also connecting to what's going on and what Matthew has said. In my present role, I am the Director Food Systems within the Ministry for Agriculture, Fisheries and Animal Rights. But we are also responsible for food, something that we have kind of acquired in the past 3 to 4 years now. And this was a transition or a change that was triggered by a series of events, obviously, the pandemic, conflicts, and so on. And since then, we have tried to consolidate different functions which are of a horizontal nature, just like environmental protection, under one roof, so to speak. So we have the establishment of the Malta Food Agency some 2 years ago. We have the Food Safety Commission, which has been transferred from the ministry responsible for health. And very recently, the setup of 2 new directorates, food standards and food systems, which is the one I lead. So all this puts in context the importance we are giving, obviously, to leading with responsibility and putting frameworks, legislative, policy, programs, schemes, funding to matters which are connected to food. So the sphere around food security is a very obviously complex one, and trying to tackle the various issues from different angles. So Matthew was speaking about Malta being a very small, overpopulated, and also dry country. When we speak about food and food security, the first thing that comes to our mind is that we import 70% of our food. So for us, the importance of local production, especially that which comes from land, because when it comes to the sea, it's a totally different scenario, it puts a different light on things, puts a different balance. So the first question in mind is, do we look at soil mainly as an environmental resource, or do we look at soil as kind of the basis or the backbone for the production of food? And again, Matthew, you were talking about the fact that you are now the competent authority for soil monitoring and obviously the legislation that is being proposed to be put in place finally after so many years. We still don't know whether it will pass through, but we have been discussing and pushing and secretly wishing, if you want, to have some kind of framework that protects soil for at least probably 20 years. And one of the things sort of when I think about soil is that it is the least visible compared to the other resources that agriculture and food production rely upon. So we have various legislation that protects water, that looks at the air quality, biodiversity, and so on. But when it comes to soil, there has been this huge gap. And connected to that fact and the fact that there was no clear responsibility for not only monitoring, but also remediation, so taking action in order to make sure that, yes, it is kept healthy, or we move towards a healthy function of soil, was this missing. And this fact also led to the problem of who's responsible for what. So from the side of agriculture, which is where we started from, looking at the importance of soil. So for me, again, an event like today's brings memories of the early work we did with the Malta project, which was establishing a Maltese soil information system. And the idea was to have a baseline for information that would serve, again, for future trends in assessing differences, variability. Now, obviously, we have a proposed framework of criteria that puts it all together. I don't want to depart too much, but obviously the objective of today is to consider what is the possibility, how do we go about having these living labs and living lighthouses, and how do we get the benefits out of them. We are not pursuing or wishing to pursue something like this just for the objective of being included in the whole network. So one thing that interests us from many angles, we have the interest of the sector of agriculture in mind. We have the interest of having food production of a certain quality, and that can only happen if we ensure the soil health. So I look at soil like the gut. It is where you have all the microbes, the synthesis of a lot of important chemicals in the body and so on. So good gut health, good brain health. The same applies to soil. So that kind of connection. And there also, even institutionally, we are looking at the next step is integrating all the various functions which center around food health and food safety under the roof of a single authority, which will be the new authority for food safety and security. So that is where we are looking, and this is a very, very important component of the puzzle, so to speak, of the ecosystem, at whatever influences food health. So all the factors around, including, for example, irrigation water. So soil, any inputs, the plant health, the animal health, anything that goes along the whole chain. And our interest in having living labs is to have the opportunity more than to test. So now I am departing from my old hat and role, which was more of an investigative nature in order to analyze and characterize the soil and be able to know that we have this certain type of soils. In fact, it was thanks to the project that we characterize soil according to not only classification, but also certain basic parameters and also metals and nutrients, but to use it as an opportunity to engage. So, Matt, you were saying that thanks to this new proposal, we have strengthened and consolidated our collaboration between the two ministries, which is, again, I think not an exception in terms of having different ministries and different competencies and everyone either trying to enlarge the territory or else to keep it as small as possible. So our interest is to have this opportunity to engage with stakeholders. And who are our stakeholders? They are the farmers, because they are the ones using the land. So sometimes we think of soil as an environmental resource, which it is, and here in Malta, because we have more countryside than natural sites, it is like agriculture is our main environmental type, so our main rural environment. But obviously farmers are the ones who use the land, who use the soil for and within a living process in order to produce food. And again, they might themselves, and I would have wished to see more participation even during an event like today's, because they are the one with the most intimate connection to what is happening on the land, how the soil behaves, how it interacts. So the way I see this is like a lot of connections and relationships that we need to work on. So I'd like to listen to ideas and possibilities of how we can bring in the different players in this connection. And ultimately, they will be convinced or attracted to participate if they see a real benefit coming out of it. Okay, so kind of my call is do not look, or let's not look at this in terms of an academic or a funded project or a scientific something that, but rather something more living, more user-friendly, that convinces the users, the farmers, that it is ultimately 100% in their interest to care. I mean, they already do, but our challenge is to connect what is going on out there, what we call sustainable soil management, guidelines for good agricultural practices, and so on, and to translate those in tangible actions that they feel that they are empowered to take forward. I think in that way, so probably we would need to bring them at the start of the process. I think farmers are the most important element in our equation. I think that's the only way. And I see this even in our other efforts. Right now, for example, we are working to launch Malta's first strategy for healthier food systems. Again, looking at the complex of food systems, at the complex of the food chain. And it all starts with the producers, with the farmers. So let's use a similar model and listen and be as open as possible to suggestions, practical, not guidelines, actions on how labs can be taken out. I started in a lab, taken out of the rooms of the labs into the field where they belong, and that is, I think, the only way it can work. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sonia. Thank you, Matthew, for your presentation. So just now, after all this presentation, we will have later on a presentation from Ms. Muriel Mambrini to give us a practical real example of Living Labs who are working in EU. And also we'll have a workshop exercise where we are going to work together and to think, to design a living lab for Malta. It will be coordinated by my dear colleague Tamara Skembri from MCST. So now I will move on to I will follow up with the focus, let's say, of the soil health living labs and lighthouses. So we are going to dive into the definition and the concept and the structure of the living labs. So there is a lot of definition regarding the living labs, but this is, let's say, the definition that we selected. Let's say that we think that it regroup all the concept of the living labs. So the living labs is user-centered, place-based, and transdisciplinary research and innovations ecosystem, which involve land managers, scientists, and other relevant partners in systemic research and good design, testing, monitoring, and evaluation of solutions in real-life setting to improve their effectiveness for soil health and accelerate adoption. So mainly, the living labs contain several mainly there are four main words: user-centered, multi-stakeholders, real life, and several sites. Living Labs contain several sites like farm, forest, exploration, city park, or other at regional or at sub-regional level. The soil lighthouses are kind of individual sites of exemplary performance, which are places for demonstration of solution, training, and communication that are exemplary in their performance in terms of soil health improvement. They showcase good practices. They are places for demonstration, training, and communication, and they help the adoption of sustainable practices by inspiring land users. Lighthouses are a single sites, one farm, one forest, one industrial site, one urban city green area, etc. So the mission implementation, the MIP, the mission implementation plan, defines a set of criteria for the selection and setup of living labs in the context of the soil mission. And this definition is very important regarding the European Commission, because later on in the call for proposal, it's very important to stick to this, let's say, criteria. So the criteria are classified across four main area for living labs, which they are the aims, which refer to the innovation, co-creation, formal learning, contribution to social challenges, improving soil health and related ecosystem. So the aims, the activities. So the activities are the co-creation, co-development, experimentation, research on impact of this innovative practices, networking, and demonstration. For the participants, so mainly it's a public-private people partnership, real user, the farmers, soil manager, and the wider public, the citizens, and all the relevant networks. The context, so it depends of the multiple discipline. As we said, it's transdisciplinary, so it could be social sciences, it could be a lot of discipline, but also the method, the dimension, T2B place-based approach, and real life context is very important. Also, we need a robust scientific setup for ecosystem assessment. So mainly the living labs are a key tool to link between the research and the other stakeholders. So the robust scientific setup also is a key in the living labs. So why we implement the living labs? So more and more we see several parties affected by common problem, but they are not able to collaborate together and address this problem because of several barriers, including language barriers, complex challenges that can be solved by single stakeholders, lack of trust, different approach, different goals, practical solutions are not evaluated. So there is really, if each stakeholder will work from his side, it will be very complicated because the challenges really could link between all the stakeholders. And if they work together and they put together their efforts, they could really manage to find a solution. So in such context, living labs are particularly important because they are the environment where they can overcome this barrier and start working really together. What can we expect from the living labs? So living labs could become inspired by each other for sure, learn to think out of the box, better understand each other. So mainly this is mainly all the what we can expect from a working group, or when we put together our efforts to work on a problem. The component of the Living Labs. So Living Labs can tackle many of the collaboration barriers, but the key element of the Living Labs are carried out in real life setting, as we said, we repeat, is co-creating with large and multidisciplinary set of stakeholders, including land manager, owner, farmers, from the very first moment. So having all the stakeholders from the first moment is very important, because not started, for example, from the research and then include all the other stakeholders, or working on the farmer side or from the agro-industry side and then adding the other stakeholders. We need to start from the beginning to work together on the problem. Then we will find not easily, but we will manage to find a practical solution that could really go to the implementation and go to the scaling up. So to ensure the correct application, it's important to consider the following elements during the setting up of a Living Labs. So I will not repeat, but mainly it's very important. But one point which not mainly mentioned is the business model, which is also very important to ensure sustainability and also to ensure the long run of the Living Labs. So the Living Labs need to have a business model so that they could work together, because at this moment there is funds, but at some moment for sure the funds will not be enough. And also they could even manage to fund themselves without the funds, because the funds are very competitive and are not easy also to afford. So it's very important to think about the business models to ensure the sustainability. So the soil health Living Labs are based and are collaboration between multiple actors. So they operate at regional or at sub-regional landscape, and they coordinate experiments on several sites within a regional or sub-regional area. And here we can see the difference between the Living Labs, the Living Lab experimentation site, and the lighthouses. As you can see, the lighthouses is more on local, one farm, one urban site, but the Living Labs are sub-regional and not only one specific site. It need to be at regional level. Regarding the activity, so mainly the Living Labs are more on coordinated experimentation and partner, but the other are more on experiment. The Lighthouse are experiment and Living Labs experimentation, co-creating knowledge and innovation. Regarding the performance, so the Living Labs are more in progress at landscape scale, and the other are mainly in progress on the site and demonstrate high performance. So the Living Labs can be applied at different scale, as we said, but always we need to take into consideration the common aspect that bring together the Living Labs. So Living Labs need to tackle the soil health needs and consider the local context, which is very important to address the specific soil challenges, and we need to link it to the specific mission objective that we presented earlier. For this, Living Labs area could cut across regional or even national border, where this would make sense from the soil condition point of view. We'll present more regarding this point because it's very important. Okay. So as we can see here, so the Living Labs can be applied at different scales. So on the map on the right side, the common soil challenges are highlighted by the green colored area. In this example, what we can see is that the Living Labs and its sites are located in the green area that present specific soil challenges within regional border and targeting the whole region. But Living Labs can also focus at sub-regional level, focusing on specific area within regional border. So the regional border are not, let's say, the main thing in the Living Labs. We could go beyond. So as you can see, because the soil challenges can go beyond the border of the region, so the Living Labs can go beyond the region. That's why there is this transnational approach or sub-regional approach. And the administrative and geographic border really doesn't matter. So mainly the common soil challenges are the main focus for the Living Labs. As you can see here, so Living Labs could also have several regions. When duly justified based on soil condition and it's manageable from the administrative point of view, Living Labs also can across national borders. In this last example, two adjacent regions of different countries are affected by common soil health challenges, represented on the right map by the green color. So when this can be addressed only through cross-border collaboration, Living Labs can also be operating across different countries, and which is the case of the call of the European Commission regarding Horizon. It will be transnational call. So that's why it's very important that the multi-stakeholders get in touch with other international stakeholders. And in this project Nations, we'll come back later. We will present to you, we'll have another event in 11 and 12 of June where we are going to link between national stakeholders with other stakeholders from several countries, and we are going to help you to matchmake to find other stakeholders who have the same, let's say, issues and the common soil challenges, and to help you to link with international stakeholders, because we know it's not very easy. And this comes under the Nations project in the support that we are going to bring to the stakeholders. So within the Living Labs topic on soil health, each proposal is expected to have one project consortium, including 4 to 5 Living Labs with their respective partner, multiple sites and lighthouses if already identified. According to the MIP, Mission Implementation Plan, Living Labs should involve from 10 to 20 experimental sites. However, depending on the specific context, land use, soil health challenges addressed, applicants can propose Living Labs with fewer experimental sites. Please consider that the main common elements bringing Living Labs together in a project is their shared objective to collaborate on soil health issues. This is very important, relevant to the region where they operate. It's very important. These common elements and any other commonality thus need to be explained very clearly in the proposal. Please revise this point, is very important. This proposal should describe a rationale for cooperation across the various Living Labs. So even when you present the 5 Living Labs in the proposal, you need also to link between these Living Labs, as you can see in the slides. And also you need to explain how this work will undertake and will contribute to one or more of the mission specific objective. As we said, we don't need to tackle all the mission specific objective, but really we need to select the ones who match with our soil challenges. Okay, so in line with this rationale, there are different ways to address common aspects with Living Labs in project. Note that the example we are going to provide are not intended to be exhaustive. So Living Labs can focus on same mission soil specific objective and different land use type, like agriculture, industrial, other land use type, which we'll explain better later. like agro-industrial. Forestry also could be. Another option is that Living Labs within the consortium focus on different soil health issues affecting the same land use across Europe. And also Living Labs can also focus on the same objective and land use, but they have different focus, for instance, different local needs. So mainly this is the three way where we could, the common aspect within the Living Labs. Finally, we would like to stress the importance of Living Labs being set up at regional or sub-regional level, taking into consideration the local context where the work of Living Labs will be carried out. So we need to link between, it's true, it's regional, but we need mainly to take into account the local context. It's essential to always highlight and properly present in applications the common aspect within the sites of the Living Labs, as well as within the various Living Labs in the project, detailing how the coordination of activities across Living Lab will be established. While as we saw before, cross countries Living Labs can be justified, this application has limit. As you can see in the image, it's important to prevent the cross-national and justified scope. In the case of a remote site, it's important to explain the management and the involvement in the co-creation activities. So this is the Living Labs per land use type. There is 4. So agriculture, Living Labs, forestry Living Labs, urban Living Labs, industrial Living Labs. Okay. So to help you in Nations, we already provide several fact sheets on the EU soil mission Living Labs and Lighthouses that we'll send to you by email later after the event, where we explain, we help you to get a proper understanding on the Living Labs call for topics and the specification of the Living Labs. We invite you to take a look on each fact sheet where we present also the funding opportunities. And there is also fact sheet per land use type. There is agriculture, forestry, and urban and post-industrial land use. The multi-stakeholders approach is very important, and we repeat that in the Living Labs, we need to have mainly all the stakeholders, the resources, the farmers, public sector, academia, citizens also are key to be part of the Living Labs. The actors for sure can vary depending on the focus, objective, and context. That's why we briefly go over the different stakeholders per land use type. So as you can see, so it's mainly logical that in the agriculture we'll have the cooperative, the farmer, the agribusiness. In the urban building, urban planners, forestry landowners, forest companies, forest owner, industry, the public also could be, and the industrial SMEs and all the stakeholders. So here, mainly regarding the government and the public sector from each land use type, the local regional level is very important to have the municipality, the local council, public authorities. So as you can see in the slides, academia also for sure, all the stakeholders related. Sorry. Okay. So here, government, public sector, here the academia. I think it's clear who are the stakeholders in each land use type, and here the citizens, civil society users. the NGOs also could be very important, the consumer also, all the national, regional movement also could be part of the Living Labs, also is very important. Okay. So Miss Muriel Membrini will later explain several examples of successful Living Labs, so I will not give you now an example, but I will move on that I will share with you other initiatives that really could help you in that, which is the prep soil, which is also another project, as well as Nations, that could really help you. The prep soil, they are mapping all the Living Labs that are existing now in Europe, and they are also in the framework of the mission support H 2020. And they are mapping, and we invite you to look at the map and register also your Living Labs or initiative in their mapping. I don't know if you have any question, because we didn't open the floor, because now we are going to move on to the Living Lab call, and then we will have the coffee break, and also we'll open the floor to the question also regarding the call. Okay, so we will move on. So the last year, I think 2 call for proposal were published, and this year there is a new one, which in April the mission has included 2 topics to fund Living Lab project, and we will provide you some information regarding these 2 topics. And really, we will send you also the link to the call to the Horizon work program, where also you could find a lot of information regarding this calls. So mainly this is the 2 call. And Nations will support, because there is other calls for proposal, but today we'll present only the 2 that Nations will support you on if you are going to submit for sure. So we are going to focus on the soil health one, which is co-creating solution for soil health in Living Labs, and the 2 on urban, which is Living Labs in urban area for healthy soils. So the deadline for application will be 8th of October, and there is a single stage submission, which means by the funding and tenders portal that there is really a heavy submission, but it's a single stage. And as we said earlier, that there is 4 or 5 Living Labs by each application, located at minimum at least 3 different member states. And they are 100% funding for any actor because they are research and innovation action. Please think critically of which actor you could include in your proposal. Who could you need to overcome your soil health challenges? What are their roles in their collaboration? They are a key question in preparing your submission. The stakeholders may will be different from the ones you already know, so you need even to reach other stakeholders, and we will help you in that. I will explain later. And for your proposal, remember to describe the capabilities and roles of the different partners based on their area of expertise. So mainly for each partner who have an expertise, you need to focus on their expertise. So it will be 36 million funding, and they expect 3 application funded, which mean 12 million by application. So there is a lot of funds, but it's very competitive, and that's why the call for proposal need to have several stakeholders, which the last year, for example, in some submission, there is more than 40 partners for submission. So that's why to link and to know who are going to submit is very important. And as I said, we have an event where we're going to recognize transnational matchmaking and where we're going to help you to connect with other person who are interested in submitting. Mainly the 36 million is for the soil health, but for the urban, there is only 12 million euro funding. What should you consider on your journey to being part of or in lead of the submission of application this September? First of all, you need to identify your local soil health challenges and relate these challenges to one or more soil mission objectives, as we explained. Then you need to form or join a local living lab. That living lab is formed of several sites at regional or sub-regional level, which may differ in land use, but which the rationale for collaboration is clear. With this future living labs, you reach out to potential collaborators to form a network of living labs, your international consortium. I repeat, the rationale for collaboration has to be clear. With this consortium, you work out the project application. So the living labs don't need to be created legally, or it could be informal way to have a group of stakeholders, and you are working on with the definition of the living labs could be considered as a living labs, and then you could, with the funding, become more structured and more organized. So this is the proposal template for applicants. So this is the main question that you will be asked to answer. So the main points that we have seen in the presentation, so the countries, the region, the made land use type, soil specific objective, type of actor. So mainly all this question need to be answered. So this is, let's say, as I can see, the living labs realization became after the submission, after having the grants, you could really create your living labs legally and formally, and you are more structured to work. But now we are more on understanding, let's say, the concept and initiate and join the consortium. That's why in NATI00NS, we could check our website and you could check our activities. So we are having like this event, which we call the National Engagement Event in 44 countries, EU, and some Mediterranean countries. And we have a matchmaking platform which gather more than 750 participants from the 43 countries. So we'll share with you the link of the platform and we'll ask you to connect and to create your profile so that people, and you could, there is some criteria where you could select which land use of focus, which type of organization you are, which is your focus, what you want. You could even propose, and you could even ask for a meeting for each stakeholders register in the platform. So mainly this platform, the aim is mainly to help you to detect the other stakeholders and to create consortium, because we know it's very hard to find the stakeholders. So we have the engagement event, we have the matchmaking events, but also we have some tools that could help you. The fact sheet and e-learning. In our website, you could find the fact sheet. You could find a lot of resources that could help you to define and prepare your proposal. And you have a help desk. If you have any question, you have yes, for sure, we'll come back. But mainly here it's help desk, where if you find any problem, you could ask us and we will answer to you and we'll bring you the help that you need. We are also going to have a webinar specifically on setting up, developing and enlarging living labs that will train you to create and to familiarize with the concept of the living labs, how to set up, how to develop, how to enlarge. And also we have a coaching to support the stakeholders available in local language and with appointed mentors that could help you. We have the thematic webinar events and webinars. We already organized the thematic webinar, but in our website, we could find all the recorded, we organized thematic webinar for all land use type and for several mission objective. You could find the recording, a lot of contact in our website. So I will ask you, you could find a lot of resources that could help you. And for sure, the matchmaking and international thematic events, which 11 and 12 of June, we'll send you an invitation. So the 11th of June will be the first topic, which is the soil health, and the 12th of June regarding the urban. So we'll have a matchmaking event. So we'll present the main call for proposal, and then we will dedicate 2 hours for matchmaking. So you could propose, you could ask for a meeting. So it will be the 11th and 12th of June. So please mark your calendar. So for individual coaching session, I put as person of contact Ms. Tamara Scambry, that could be our focal point, and then we could link you with the mentor or the coach that you need regarding the preparation of your proposal, the matchmaking, the capacity building webinar, the thematic events. So as we already explained. And this is the matchmaking tool to facilitate, this is the link to the platform, and the 11th and 12th of June, the matchmaking platform, the matchmaking events. And we will have, this is the date for the capacity building webinar. You will find the access in our website. So first we'll present the mission soil funding opportunities. It will be presented by the European Commission on the 18th of June. And then, so the other webinars and they are coming till October, till the submission. So thank you very much. So we try to, I know it's a lot of content. It's not even very easy to present, especially that it's very specific, but we hope it was clear. And if you have any question, we are here to help and to answer. Thank you very much. Yes.
So Madi, from your experience, and thank you for providing all the different tools and platforms that our stakeholders can make use to connect and form these living labs. As you said, there are 2 main topics that will fund soil living labs, and then there are a set of other topics that are focusing on soil. But today, the focus of the event is really to form a living lab. Would you think that I've seen it from previously funded project from last year, most of them, they had their local living lab with local stakeholders, and then there were other local living labs in different countries, and they collaborated together on a common soil problem, soil challenge. Would you suggest that for these specific topics, we would have, for example, one living lab, let's say we're focusing on drought, one problem on drought, 4 stakeholders from Malta, 4 stakeholders from Cyprus, and they would form one living lab like that? Would you think that it's more attractive? Or should we, stick to having a local living lab in Malta, 8 stakeholders from Malta, 8 from Cyprus, and then we would still work together in that way, but the main living lab would still be as a whole in the 2 different countries. From experience, what would you suggest that would be the best?
Yeah. Regarding that, it's not the point is not how you are going. The 2 way they are good, but the main important thing is how to present the thing. So mainly if you have, I think it's better to have this transnational approach and to have, if you have the same soil, the common challenges, so it's better to work together and to submit, not only to have national level. So mainly the European Commission, for example, for this event, they asked us to put efforts on Malta and Cyprus. So mainly it's a common, let's say there are two islands, so they have the main common challenge. So it's better to work together to submit. But even if we're going to work apart, but you need to be in the consortium where there is other stakeholders. So here, how will you present the thing? So you need to be rational, you need to be clear, you need really to emphasize why there is this organization. So I mean, this is the important thing, is to explain. So if you explain, it's better to work for each country on. So it's good, but you need really to explain and to be rational in your explanation and to be coherent. So many, this is the point. There is no a true or a good receipt. No, you need to really to better explain and to have a successful, let's say, proposal.
Not sure if there are any other questions from the audience. I think we could, I think we're
Yes,
good on
we are.
time. We can, yeah. You want to take the floor and send the next?
We have break coffee now,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah,
So
so-
I think after all this information, it's good to have a good coffee, and then we will come back in more engaging session. So we'll have a practical example from Ms. Muriel Membrini, which will join us online. And then we'll have a workshop, as we explained, organized by Tamara later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your invitation. Great to be with you. I've been introduced as the one who will present to you examples of living labs. Actually, I'm a member of the board of the mission. And I will, and I have examples of living labs, but which were not shaped for soil health living labs. So I'm always quite reluctant to present examples, but I have some if you want. I will more focus my talk on what are living lab, where you can find living lab, where you can find inspiration. And my will is overall that those instruments just will help you to achieve what you can dream on regarding improvement of soil health in Malta, and the way you can use this possibility offered by the Soil Mission to go at a step of co-creation and co-engagement that wouldn't have been possible without it. So it's much more the orientation of my talk, but I have, of course, examples if you wish, and I will base my talk on many examples, I could say, because it will be really a state based on. I have an echo, sorry. A statement based on the literature analysis and the in and return between the literature and what is going on field. So just to let you know, and then to say that I'm really open to question and exchange. So here is my presentation, the objectives and the specific objective, because the former board has really, of the mission, has set out specific targets by 2013 regarding each specific objective. I mean, reduction of desertification, conserve soil organisms, carbon soil. So the idea and the objective is really to achieve those targets all together. And then I want to emphasize that to do so, there is really a mix of activities that has been described in the introduction, which are combined. And soil living labs and living labs for soil health are really the main instruments. But there is also an environment which is really thought by the European Commission to be conducive enough, I think, in terms of also regulation, in terms of providing capacity to develop data analysis, data evaluation at the European level, and to assess really the improvement in terms of soil health at the European level. So Living Labs are really the instruments that is dedicated to a local proposal to achieve these goals. So what is the first thing to think on is which kind of objective you think you are willing to contribute altogether, or you think you can really contribute in a significant manner altogether. I think this is very important. Then if we go into why those instruments have been chosen, it's because we know a lot about Living Labs. They exist since 1990. They have been developed for with the development of communication and information technology, really to be more efficient in terms of innovation. There are open innovation instruments, the more refined ones, and they have really been developed to be able to consider the user experience in the proposal that will be, or in the innovation that will be proposed in the information and communication technology. And then they have been applied in very different socio-ecosystems, as you will see. And at each application in the different socio-ecosystem in which they were, they gain additional attributes. And at the end, what have been seen is that they are really very interesting instruments to lead the transition, to make the different stakeholders right around the table and to implement a process that will help conceive collectively the innovation that will be interesting or valid for the transition of the system. So they are really be seen, and there are examples and there are achievements in this way as instruments which are really helpful to accelerate what is not that easy to do. And we know that improving soil health is not that easy to do. But all of them, whatever they were, applied or dedicated to, have the same principle. They are providing co-creation with users and in real conditions. And those three principles have really attracted the European Commission for Soil Health, because they know that to improve soil health, you have really to be local and to take into account the local conditions. Providing and including the users into the way to change the practice is very efficient. And the potential of Living Labs is what you do on a specific location, you will be able to upscale it or to share it with others in another location because of the process of co-creation, the process that is implemented within. And what is also very interesting is that I'm speaking about innovation, but in Living Labs, you have many innovations going on. You have, of course, innovation for developing new business areas, but because of the co-creation process and because you engage the different stakeholders, you have also social innovation, which is occurring, and also an empowerment capacity which is developed just because you are co-creating and experiencing together. Three principles is easy to keep in mind, but they are not easy to implement. And so that's why the European Commission, along with the calls, is also providing facilities and support to the ones who are willing to develop this. So that's why nations exist, and that's why also there is a platform which is developed, which is called Soil L, and is aiming at really supporting the development of capacity within and for the different living labs that will be developed. Because here I have an illustration coming from really living labs. They have developed themselves this kind of illustration, so it gives you the way they feel. the co-creation process. Co-creation process is also an iteration process. So you think together, you begin to explore, you decide to experiment all together, but then you also decide to look at what you have in terms of results and to evaluate. And then you have another iteration, which means that it is a process which demands time, but if you succeed, then you have many possibilities of innovation there. And this time and this engagement is something where there have been also a method that has been developed, and it's quite interesting to really, and those engagement sessions that are proposed are quite interesting to really be on the right side when you will implement this co-creation process. And co-creating with stakeholders, this is what we say here, because if you want to change, if you want to have the transition, you need to have everyone on board. Otherwise, there is always something which will be, or which will become more difficult. And you have here an example of a living lab which has been developed for improving food health. I taken from this living lab, just to show you how they dealt with the process. So which means that they have really put on board many different organizations, many different clusters. They try not to forget anyone in the value chain to really have the good innovation process. And which means that if you look at the different characteristics that the European Commission is emphasizing regarding living labs, which is creative relation at the landscape level, user-centered innovation, and place-based, you see how it can go when you have multiple actors with complementary knowledge on board, and which means also that to run living labs or to run this kind of instruments, it can be also very valuable to have on board social and behavioral sciences and to connect the different sciences that will be helpful in terms of improving soil health. So people knowing about soil science, but also be aware that having on board people working on social and behavioral science can also be an asset. This is just an illustration of what I told you before. So those living labs, they have been firstly, the living lab instruments have been firstly implemented in the communication and from information technology, then in the health system to develop e-health. Then we have had a lot of development in cities with the urban living labs for resilient cities, then for rural development, and this is where European Commission began to support the development of living labs and also settled the European network of living lab. Then for developing cultures or open campuses. Lately on, we have development in the agro-ecosystems. And I have two examples, if you want, on those agro-ecosystem. And I think that soil and living lab for soil health are really new and will bring a new stone into the living lab developments. But I want to say this because I'm sure that if you look around you, you will have examples of living labs in one or the other application, in one or the other socio-ecosystem, which can also bring knowledge and into what is going on within a living lab. And as already said, all those living labs, they have in common to be settled because of an aim. The aim is innovation, or the aim is resiliency, to be more resilient or to be ready for climate change. It's a very large aim, like improving soil health at the European level. Usually it's a very large aim. And then there you have the capacity also to engage for having a more formal learning pathway between the different users that you will be bring in. The activities common to all those living labs are the co-creation activity and the iteration, as I told you. The participants are always of very different background. It's more or less complex, but always of very different background. And there is usually a combination between public and private participants. And what makes also living labs is the participation of academics within those living labs, academics who have different roles and different functions into the living labs. And then what is common for all those living labs is the context. They are all in real life context. They are all experimenting in real life context. Those are examples I will come to if you want, but I don't want to be too long. What I want to say is that those particularities of living labs are interesting assets, because all those principles, they are common to scientists, to policymakers, to producers, to stakeholders. Co-creation, involving users, and in real context, sounds to everyone. But for researchers and also for stakeholders, it's a new way of experimenting, a new way of innovating. It's a new way of raising questions. And for scientists, it can also be a new object for research. And that's why I was really more willing to give the will to you to jump into what can we do and what can we realize, knowing that there are also examples, there are possibilities, there are methodologies that will help us co-create and pass the different steps for the living labs. What we have done at the board was to taking into account what European Commission is expecting in terms of soil health, what European Commission is expecting in terms of how to build living lab for soil health, or how to build living labs to be eligible to the calls. I mean, building living labs based on at minimum 5 different locations, 5 different sites for experimenting, and then making connection between 3 member states. It's something that is additional to the regular way of building living labs. So what we have done at the board, at the mission board, was to define or to propose success factors, knowing what are those 8 objectives and the specific targets in, knowing what is in the living labs and what can provide usually the living labs, knowing what are the requests of the European Commission for soil health living labs, and knowing what is expected in regular research and innovation project of the European Commission. And what we have produced are the analysis of the ambitions that have to be achieved by the soil mission. Then we have focused on what are the characteristics of living labs, which make them unique and interesting for the transition. And based on this compilation, we have identified 8 factors of success, which can be interesting to take into account when you are preparing the proposal. And we have been sharing those factors of success also with the evaluators. In short, they are here, and you will understand them, I think, based on what has been presented by my colleagues before and what I was sharing with you, is having in mind that the living lab that you will propose or that you're willing to propose will also bring awareness and engagement of the society. It's a very interesting asset, really, to continue to open what you are willing to implement to a more larger systemic change at your level. Then, of course, co-creating and looking for co-creating activity and exchange of practice with as many land users that you can bring in is also an interesting asset. We know that working on the adequate political framework will help leverage difficulties or breaks. So having in mind that bringing in also the ones who are making the local policy can be also an interesting asset. Taking into consideration how the land that you're in, and this has been presented by the very first talk, how the land is used and related to social, cultural, and economical need will help also design the right ambition for the living labs that you would like to implement. Thinking also that having in mind that those living labs will need a specific economical model, mixing public and private good, and stimulating effort, and for having a look on how to bring in also interesting economical model fit for a more solidary economy will help. And being involved in networks at the local, at the regional, or bringing in the ones who are in head of network at the local, regional, and European scale can also help design the interesting living labs for improving soil health that you are willing to implement. So this is more or less what I wanted to share with you. I would like to thank you for your attention, and I have in case of examples, but those will not be examples of soil health living lab because they are developing now. There will be example for agroecosystem living labs, so I didn't want to be less ambitious with those living lab that it's foreseen for the soil health living lab. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muriel. And I'm not sure if there are any questions in the room. So I think you summarized everything very nicely. We'll now move on towards my presentation, actually. I will be very brief because I want to leave more time for you to discuss. And I will just further summarize everything and explain the exercise that we'll be undertaking to further stimulate discussions. So I'm going to now present some tips and tricks for developing a living lab proposal. Next slide, please. Oh, I have the clicker actually. Okay. Yes, so the Commission has obviously specific set of targets for the soil mission. And here is a summary of the proposals that were submitted last year. So the majority focused on to conserve organic carbon stocks and to improve soil structure. So those were the two most popular topics, followed by soil literacy. Yeah, followed by soil literacy. Now, again, the Commission wants to also secure a balance. So it would also be interesting perhaps to locally or perhaps even in proposals to focus on other soil objectives that could perhaps make it more attractive as well. But again, always see where our national priorities are. But I think it's good to know what were the popular soil objectives last year. I have just summarized some tips and tricks on how to go about this. So make sure your objectives are clear. What do I mean? There are a set of soil objectives that I presented in the previous slide. you have to choose them. You have to, in your proposal, you have to clearly state which soil objective you will be working on. And you can use information from existing databases in the soil, in the topic. The Commission actually cites the data from USO. So, or perhaps some other studies from other regions. The methodology justification, I know that in the previous presentations from Matthew, he was speaking about certain methodological approaches that they were thinking about soil monitoring. So that could also, this would be something that would fit in the excellence part of the proposal. And again, get inspired as well from business models that are part of, that can be found on the Mission Soil portfolio. Also, Madi from NATI00NS, they have some very good content on business models for Living Labs. So there are so many fact sheets and information out there, and we're here today, so you can also speak to us. Again, embrace stakeholder engagement. You've heard all about it today. Make sure you involve the different actors, farmers. In the topic that we will be addressing today, they have allocated up to 200,000 euro per stakeholder. If you want, you can give one single farmer 200,000 euro if you want, because the whole budget is 12 million for the project. But we'll discuss it, and we'll see how we can really formulate this. But again, there is up to 200,000 euro for financial support to third parties, because obviously land use managers, farmers, etc., they are not they're not coming from the academia side, so they are not going to be engaged in filling forms and perhaps being bothered with administrative burden, but they are the people on the ground. So they really want to actually work with soil and not with reporting, let's say that. So let's make these funds accessible to them as well. Again, Living Lab for Sustainability, as mentioned by previous colleagues, some plans, some let's say vision needs to be there for the Living Lab. So even discussions with national authorities on how this could last beyond the funding allocated. Impact pathways. How will your Living Lab create impact? These are very, very important in a Horizon Europe proposal. So it is split the proposal in 3 parts: excellence, impact, and implementation. This is not different from the soil topic. There are a total of 9 key impact pathways, 3 for each section. So you have scientific, societal, and economic. You don't need to address them all, but in your proposal, you clearly need to say which impact pathway you're addressing. For example, number 9, leveraging investments in R&I. So when everything comes together, automatically you will realize which impact pathway you're targeting. So this is, to me, probably you realize at the end about how many you're actually targeting through your proposal, because for sure you're going to even target societal one, addressing EU policy priorities, etc. Dissemination and exploitation measures, please. This is something that needs to be in your proposal. How are you going to disseminate? Dissemination means targeting a specific target group. Let's say that you're going to issue a paper. The paper will not be read by the general public. The paper will be addressed to the scientific community, most probably, or to the policymakers. So there you are disseminating. Communication would be perhaps your website, the general public, something that the general public is going to understand. And then exploitations, perhaps it could be a patent. So how you're going to, let's say, commercialize. Doesn't mean that you will necessarily commercialize something, but exploitation means really taking kind of a step forward your results. Ensure quality work plans. What does this mean? Clear work packages. Clearly define what you want to do. There are 2 classic work packages: management work package and communication, dissemination, and exploitation work package. Those are, they have to definitely be there in every proposal. So then obviously the technical work packages. So what are you going to do? Are you going to do pilots? So then obviously the rest of the work packages are going to be followed from there. It's a 12 million project, the one that we'll be working on today. So there's no rule, but there will be for sure 5 work packages for that, and even more. There is no rule, but again, such a budget would would make more sense to have more work packages even for you to structure your work better. Define partner roles. Each partner has to be there and with a specific role, and that it makes sense. So align your priorities, and at proposal stage, everyone has to know what their role is and how they're contributing, and perhaps certain actors might want to be there as a consultative kind of partner, and perhaps certain actors really want to work and perhaps do trainings and organize workshops. So every partner has their specific role. So I really summarized through everything because I know that I think we're just on time or perhaps a bit late. The purpose of this workshop is really to get everyone together in one room and work on the Malta Living Lab. Now the exercise part will take place. Frankie, my colleague Frankie, will distributing a number of documents. I think the first step would be to perhaps, I think we can do one big group. If everyone can just come around 2 tables. Yeah, I think we need to join 2 tables and have everyone in one group. So I'll give you 2 minutes for that. Yes? Yes, the slides will be shared afterwards. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But what he asked is, it's a 12 million project. The minimum criteria is 3 different partners from 3 different countries. There will be more partners. So I'm thinking. No, there's no rule. The budget has to make sense, but obviously it is not attractive to have one partner with 6 million and then one partner with 100,000 and then one partner with 5 million. It needs to be balanced and it has to make sense. For example, if you are just involving someone to take care of distributing the funds to the farmers. I think in Malta, ARPA distributes some funds, but also the local action groups, the legs, like the Goat Zone 1, Galshlock. In Malta, there are these organizations that they disturb some funds for local bands. Perhaps it could be it could be interesting to collaborate with them, and you would say, listen, they have 200,000 euro and they will be taking care of dispersing the funds. That would be their role. They don't need 300,000 euro. If 200,000 euro are enough. But then you have the coordinator who is taking care of project management, implementing the technical work package, and then it would make sense for them to get 1 million. So again, you have to come around. It has to be a consortium and everyone takes care of their own budget as necessary. So, but again, it has to make sense. You know, you're not going to get 4 million just for managing the project. So it just has to make sense, okay? And there is no set of rule. Not sure if there are any other questions. Okay, so Frankie will be distributing. I think better first for everyone to get around the table. Perhaps this table is empty. Should we join this table with here and everyone comes around the table? For our online audience, we will be now going over to the interactive session, and unfortunately, it will not be live streamed because it's quite hands-on. So thank you to the online audience that have joined us today. So, is it enough? People can get chairs around it. I think one group, 2 tables. You think you need another table? Or I'm not sure if you need it. However, So good. Mela. So, we have exactly till 1 p.m. for to conclude and share outputs from this exercise. Frankie is going to share the actual topic from the Commission's work program, Commission's website, and you have all the details there, including the budget. 3 projects of 12 million will be funded, and they are expecting between 4 to 5 living labs. So hopefully one of them would be the Malta one. The purpose of this exercise is to focus mostly on the Malta one, but I will also ask you to hypothetically invent for other countries to collaborate with you. So you will also get some documentation. Frankie will also distribute the workshop exercise, basically what I just said, the workshop exercise. So you will have around, you have quite a number of copies. Workshop exercise. So probably almost, I mean, like this one has to be shared because there aren't too many. As I explained, just come up with a title of your project brief and kind of give it a focus. Perhaps you're going to focus on the Mediterranean region, or you want to focus perhaps on woody crops. Those are whatever you find relevant. This will take place in the discussions, and obviously outline the soil challenges that you want to take care of within the spec. You also have something, I mean, this will also help you to clarify a bit and brainstorm a bit, some kind of brainstorming questions as well. How can you involve other actors, and the soil mission objectives that you think are relevant for Malta and for you, what you want to do. Mela, he's still distributing them, but you can have my copy over there. And another packet, this one, where you have the kind of circle picture with the tractor, etc. That is what was funded last year, the topic of last year, for you to get an idea. For you to get an idea what was funded, it's a summary. So the one in black and white is this year's topic. The one in color is last year. If you open the packet, there are project A and B. So these are actual projects that were funded from last year. Obviously, I did a summary of the consortium representation and what they focused on, and some other information spread into bullet points. Like, for example, project A, they formed 5 different living labs from 5 different countries, just for you to get an idea of what was funded in the past. Yes, so as I said, you can go on the Prep Soil website and immediately identify what these projects were. So I'm going to let it all in your hands, perhaps just to kickstart some discussions. Perhaps by 11:45, we just wrap it up and then 12:45. 12:45, then we wrap it up and go for lunch, and you can continue discussions during lunch as well.